Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and as always, it's my continuing mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. What happens when you mix the exploratory gameplay of Journey, the puzzle work from The Witness, and the overall feel of Wind Waker, then you spritz it up with a developer whose name sounds like the end of a sentence when someone asks how to dull the pain after a do-it-yourself tonsillectomy surgery. You get RiME from Tequila Works, makers of the equally odd yet anything but ordinary title Sexy Brutal just recently as well. RiME is a third-person exploration title out May 26th for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC for the suggested price of $29. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for RiME. Someone's played Journey, Shadow Puppet Puzzles, and the undeniable grandeur of Big Metal Balls. Graphics start first. You know, the first time RiME was shown, instant comparisons to titles like Last Guardian and Journey were brought to the forefront, and I have to say, whether it's the overall stretching art aesthetic of the later levels or the apparent nod to the main character in Journey at times, it sure does actually fit that category. Heavy on the thick stylized graphics and fanciful color schemes and the Wind Waker vibes at times that are unmistakable. But it's really the sense of style that's so damn impressive here, and much of that is the developer's deft hand at not yelling, "Hey, look at this cool shit" every 30 seconds, and instead designing via gameplay progression across the level versus cool shit regression. But listen, a game like this still hinges on its level design and wouldn't work at all if it didn't have an eye towards offering mysterious lands that look like a topographical map of Charlie Sheen's soul, and we have that here with an excellent interlaced level design, spreading both wide and deep evenly, despite appearances, especially at first. Now that means you can be twirling down the forgotten paths of ancient civilizations deep in subterranean caves, and then bust out onto a long catwalk sprint towering above the new location that your childlike character is set to roam next. And the very next moment you might be deep sea diving to find an entrance to the next location. And RiME really isn't an overly long game, clocking in a bit more than 6 hours, but what it does is it makes absolutely perfect use of what's there when it comes to presenting a particular look, much like Firewatch and Journey before it, but doesn't have the repetitiveness or mistaken plans like, say, Submerged. Sadly, not everything's perfect here, because while the locations are fantastic, the platforming controls take a while to get used to, and you always feel a bit like an interpreter yelling at an electric car to turn left in some foreign language, hoping it Google translates quickly enough before you smash into a divider. Running, moving, leaping, lunging, and carrying suspiciously radioactive-looking items across the wasteland works fine, which is a little bit surprising because the issues only really rear their ugly head when you're hanging skyscraper high off the side of a seagull shit-covered ledge and the game decides that back is forward and left doesn't exist like it's in the midst of its own digital stroke. Also, when it comes to performance, there are a couple issues, especially on the console. On the PS4 and the Xbox One, we see dips below 30 in the opening section, though strangely that evens out and never really gets that bad after that point. On the PC with an NVIDIA 980 and an i7 920 at 4.2, the game actually ran locked at 1440p at 60 FPS as long as the ultra settings for anti-aliasing were not used. That thing hit it hard. Really, as a package, RiME presents one of the most stellar-looking environments start to ending credits, a game that this year easily places it next to titles like Horizon, while still allowing for its more stylized look and certainly not being that technically proficient. Sadly, it's held down by a couple little issues that don't break anything, but can leave the game feeling a bit off balance from time to time. Sound, music, and voice. And of course, when it comes to audio categories, sound is going to be up first. Now, while atmospherically, environmentally, for the most part, I was actually very happy with deep use of post-processing effects to really ram home the open cavern echoes of forgotten temples and the wide open spaces of a forest glade as you sprint across it. I had a couple issues in particular with your own footsteps. Now, while this normally doesn't bother me, their level and overall sound, which was like wrapping your hands in burlap and beating the shit out of a child's sandbox, did the game absolutely no real favors. It just never sounded right no matter what I was doing. Luckily, almost everything else does, and it's hard not to feel like you're having an epic moment when you're rolling a massive golden cannonball through a mysterious groove in the floor, and you can hear that subtle scrape of metal on stone as it suitably resists your effort. Good, but an issue here or there. And of course, that brings us to music. And this soundtrack is stupidly good. Imagine if a group of violins gathered together and poured one out for the homies, but in this case, the homies were Stradivarius that have come and gone before them, and instead of some shitty malt, it was straight up soul juice squeezed from someone's awesome idea factory. It is rare to get a soundtrack this melodic and filled with these kind of thick emotive layers you find here without sometimes sitting back and thinking, damn, someone really needs a Paxil. And somehow RiME never strays on the wrong side of utter depression and instead really impacts a sense of loneliness and loss through absolutely masterful use of string instrument groups and solos, and then backs those up with wickedly placed piano themes. This is, to put it in a better frame of reference, easily, at least in my opinion, as good as near. And that brings us to voice, of which there is none, so moving on. And of course, that will always bring us to gameplay and a bit about the story. Actually, I'm lying, there's no real story here. You wake up drowning slowly on the side of a beach of a forgotten island, and without any real preamble, you're set loose finding out how you and the world interact via just pretty much trying random shit out. Now, soon you'll find statues that tremble in fear at your presence, and when you scream, they open doors around you, and as you progress deeper, delving into this mysterious, somewhat musical world of red-hooded figurines and giant deathbirds, it dawns on you a little bit of the way through that the early stuff here is epic enough to be in some games in locations. Luckily, much like other titles of this genre, the game hinges on puzzles, both mandatory and voluntary, and in my opinion, they work incredibly well, never really leaving you puzzled for too long while doling out the occasional easy moment to keep you feeling like you're moving forward. Now, experienced puzzle gamers might actually find this a bit on the easy side, and the one time I was stymied was due to my own desire to outthink the puzzle to an almost magical degree, effectively trying to start a fire by building a friggin' fission reactor first. As you move time forward and back, destroy ancient landmarks, and progress further into the world, you explore 4 to 5 somewhat discrete locations, each with their own overarching themes playing out across their areas. I always find it strange that games like this never really seem to handle death exactly correctly, and RiME is no stranger, having the same issues, whether you're leaping to your death, shattering your femurs across the rocks of a small bay, or pirouetting across a rock gap and misjudging the distance only to disappear into the darkness below. In the end, death is nothing more than a casual reset at the last checkpoint, of which the game is actually rather lenient. But in my book, at least you can die, and for the most part, guardrails aren't really in the game, meaning you can fall to your death if you're not careful. But overall, it's a trivial thing, and the game has no real combat to speak of. It's just not that kind of title. Now, that doesn't mean it's always easy. Without spoiling anything, later on, there are times that if you're not up on your planning and strategy, there's a chance you're going to feel what it's like to be digested by the world's strangest bird. As an overall package, many puzzle games are really judged on their presentation across their levels, and this, when it comes down to it, has some excellent puzzle work across some really unique locations, and I love the game for that. Fun factor: this is actually really damned fun. It's not perfect, but despite the issues with controls that sometimes cropped up, this has to be one of the most atmospheric titles I've played in ages. Listen, these games aren't for everyone, and I truly do get that. Some folks measure their enjoyment one bullet at a time, and others by the inevitable climb up some obscure leaderboard somewhere. This game is for me, though. This is an artistic romp through a visual wonderland, and when you aren't just soaking in a vista, you're racking your brain on a shadow puzzle, or trying to figure out how in the hell it's possible to open a door in front of you when it doesn't look like there's a lock or a key, and you might not actually be facing a door at all. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. This is actually a buy at this price with this many hours, and the fact that you can go back and replay some of this and just the puzzle work and the overall presentation. This has enough that I feel that it was easily worth that cost, even though maybe sometimes there were some issues with control here or there. Overall, I enjoyed every single moment I had with RiME. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Twitter or Patreon. Patreon is how I continue to give you guys these reviews that aren't sponsored. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.